Robert Kiyosaki, I was over the moon excited and had a huge amount of anticipation. But here's what I didn't anticipate, that the actual interview would blow away any expectations that I had. This is an interview that I am going to be watching over and over again for years to come. And I'm extraordinarily privileged and excited to share it with you right now. Robert, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, so thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited too.
I feel like we could talk for days about so many things, as far as the wisdom that you've generated over the years relative to money and investment and what's wrong with the system and how to change your perspective of it. But how did you even get started here in the first place? What got you interested in this line of work that you do?
What line of work am I in?
Well, you're in a couple of lines of work. As I see, I think you're a money philosopher.
I'm an entrepreneur.
You're an entrepreneur.
I have multiple businesses.
And so what got you started on the road to being an entrepreneur?
I just didn't want a job. I mean, I just didn't want a job. Every time my school teacher says, if you don't get good grades, you won't get a job. I said, good, I'm on the right track, because I never had good grades. And that drives a lot of people crazy because education is very important. Mm-hmm. But for me, going to school was a waste of time because I had a rich dad, I had a poor dad, and my poor dad was the head of education. Mm-hmm. And he was poor because he was in education. And so I knew, my dad was a PhD, from Stanford, University of Chicago, Northwestern, head of education for the state of Hawaii. And having him as a father, I realized that if he went to school, he'd probably never be rich. So at the age of 9, I raised my hand I was in the 4th grade growing up in Hawaii, Hilo, Hawaii, a little sugar plantation town. Mm-hmm. And I asked my 4th grade teacher, I said, when will I learn about money? And she looked at me, she was like a church lady, like Dana Carvey. She goes, we don't teach money at school. So I asked her, so why am I in school then? And I kept bugging her. And finally, and she was like 10 years over retirement, I think. And she got nastier and meaner at me because I was 9 years old. My classmates were all rich and I was poor. And I'm going, I just want to be rich. I don't want to go to school. And she said to me, the love of money is the root of all evil. I looked at her, I said, well, how come my classmates are rich? They're not evil, you know what I mean? And the hypocrisy got to me, how kids are at 9.
Sure.
And so I went home to my poor dad, the head of education, PhD, all that stuff. And I said, how come they don't teach us about money at school? And he says, because the government doesn't allow us to do that. And so at 9, I went, that's strange. Mm. Do you know what I mean? I just wanted, kids will ask questions until they get their answer.
Sure.
And my dad, for Japanese, was tall, 6'4", 250 pounds, big man. And I said, Dad, that's really strange that they don't teach money at school. He says, what do they teach us to do? He says, get a job, be an employee. Mm-hmm. But I said, isn't that to work for money? He goes, well, yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want a job, and I don't want to spend my life working for money. It's a slave to money. Mm-hmm. So finally he said, well, why don't you ask your classmate, your best friend in school in the 4th grade, because his father's going to be a rich man someday. So how do you know that? He says, because Mike, my rich dad's son, is an entrepreneur. And I went, what's an entrepreneur? He says, somebody doesn't need a job. I said, I want that job. I don't want a job, and entrepreneurs create jobs. Mm-hmm. So that's how I kind of got started, just by asking what my 4th grade teacher thought were stupid questions. And that changed the direction of my life. So at the age of 9, I began studying with my rich dad, a man who never went to school. Mm-hmm. His father died when he was 13, so he took over the family business. And in retrospect, what made him smart, his teachers were his accountants, his attorneys, his bankers, his real estate agents, because he was 13 years old. And he had real teachers. What I mean by a real teacher is somebody who's actually doing the real thing in real life. Mm-hmm. And as you know, most school teachers don't do the real thing that they teach. Right. And by the time I got to the college, I went to an academy. And I was flunking out of school for calculus, 3 years of calculus, and I couldn't do a damn thing. Mm-hmm. And I asked my calculus teacher, I said, when are we going to learn about, why am I studying calculus? He goes, I don't know. And I asked him, I said, do you ever use calculus? He goes, no. I said, why do you teach it? He goes, because I get paid to. And I'm a child of the 60s. Mm. If I flunked out of calculus, it was nonstop to Vietnam. Do you know what I mean? So I had an incentive to pass calculus, which I flunked anyway. But anyway, that's where I kind of got disillusioned with school, education. Education's important. But my poor dad was a poor man, although a PhD, because they don't learn anything about money, and they don't teach anything about money in school.